was. Good. Well, I also put yeah, nice to see everyone tonight. Welcome. This is the Planning Commission of the City of Branson study session for October 7th, 2021. Tonight, I'm excited to get this training in tonight. I thank the staff for going to the trouble of putting this together. And let's get started. Call the meeting to order, and we'll have a roll call.
Good evening. I'll take roll call. Commissioner Romine? Here. Vice Chairperson O'Day?
Here.
Commissioner Richards? Here. Commissioner Howden?
Here.
Commissioner Lloyd?
Here.
Commissioner LeBlanc?
Here.
Chairperson Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Nichols?
Here.
Alderwoman Denham?
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. So the regular agenda is our Planning Commissioner training, and looks like it's going to be an annual event, or maybe more than that.
Yes, sir.
Find the resources. So let's get started. Thank you, Joel, if you can take over.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Good evening, everyone. If you remember, we had this on our agenda at the last meeting. However, due to time and kind of getting late, we decided to bump it to tonight's study session. We are very appreciative of SIMCOG up in Springfield, Southwest Missouri Council of Governments, to provide us most of the material for the presentation this evening. Hopefully it'll be beneficial, and hopefully we can continue to do this on a more regular basis. With that, we do have 30 minutes for the study session. We will do our best to get through this information, but by all means we can, if we do not, use up kind of the back end of our regular meeting right after this to kind of wrap things up, or we can decide to wrap it up at the next study session as well. We'll leave that up to discussion, see how far we get. Also, just want to make a quick note that we will need a couple minutes break between the study session and the regular meeting, just to kind of switch things over as well, and if everybody wants to stretch their legs, we'll have that opportunity as well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the City Attorney, Chris Liebeck.
Good evening, everybody. So, as Joel alluded to, this is something that we reached out to SIMCOG for. What is SIMCOG? SIMCOG, just to kind of make you all aware, that some of you that may not know what SIMCOG is, it's Association of Local Governments and Stakeholders in our area. Stands for the Southwest Missouri Council of Governments, and it is basically the federally designated economic development district for our 10-county area here in Southwest Missouri. And they're kind of, the way I would like to describe them is they're almost like a resource for us. We reach out to them as a regional think tank. So we have questions, we have concerns, we have problems. We reach out to them because, again, a lot of what we do here is unique. Silly to kind of reinvent the wheel sometimes. So we lean heavily on SIMCOG in quite a number of areas whenever we have concerns or questions. So the purpose of today and this training that we have is not to get into the weeds really on any real specific topic. Rather, it's more of an overview, just a basic overview, probably a refresher for some of you like Commissioner O'Day that have been on the commission for quite some time. But again, it's nice to kind of level set everything and know where things come from. So that being said, if Joel could kick over to the next slide. Oh, he's going to give me the mouse. That's dangerous.
That way you can do it.
So let's talk real quick. Why do y'all exist? You exist because the legislature or state government says you can't exist. So your powers come from state law. So zoning ordinance, writing of that, which we'll get into here in a little bit, and then orderly planning of development for the community. So that's your goal, basically, is you're here to exist to help facilitate planning, orderly development of the community. And the big thing on that is going to be our community plan. And I'm not going to read the slide verbatim because we are kind of up against time, but the key takeaway from the legislative authority slide here is that you are a recommending body. And what I mean by that is you make recommendations to the Board of Aldermen, to the legislative body for the city. So stuff that comes before you, you examine, you ask questions about, you view it, and with the end goal of being able to present additional or more complete information to the legislative body. So that's where your authority comes from. So the structure, planning and zoning, what is the structure? The overarching thing that drives development, that drives planning, and drives our zoning in the city of Branson is our Community Plan 2030. That is we'll say it's a living document that drives how the city should look in 2030. And that's basically the construct by which all decisions kind of flow from. So inside the comprehensive plan, there's two basic buckets there. There's our land use plan. How are we going to use the land that's within city limits? And then also capital improvement projects. So how are we going to park infrastructure and significant investment into our community? So those two things are kind of what sit inside the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is designed again to how are we going to move the city forward in an orderly fashion. Now underneath that layer, we got three basic things: the capital improvements, public improvements, sewer, water, utilities, and then land use. We control land use through one of two ways, actually both ways: zoning, how is that district of land to be used, and then individual subdivisions inside those districts or inside a parcel of land. So with zoning, you have various districts, and then you have minimum standards for the use of those districts. And then with subdivisions, we kind of look at from a platting standpoint, what are the minimum public improvements required for that plat of land? So again, everything sits under this comprehensive plan idea. So that we always use that as our living document. You hear Joel countlessly refer back to this. This is what should ultimately drive decision-making in the city, because it's the word of the people. It's the word of the citizens. It was developed through their voice, and that's what we always refer back to, is how should we be moving these projects forward? How should we frame them in context of the city's desires? So falling off of zoning here, what's a zoning regulation? So this is how we establish zoning districts, and there's two layers inside here. You have special use permits and planned development districts. So what's a special use permit? This is a way to authorize land uses that are allowed and encouraged by the ordinance and declared harmonious with the applicable zoning district. So this is something that makes sense in that zoning district. Planned development districts, on the other hand, this is a way to provide a city with the process which authorizes more flexibility in the design of development projects with specially designed designated areas of the city that would be possible through the strict application, that would not be possible through the strict application of the zoning regulations. So in essence, what you're doing is you're creating a planned development that has its own kind of set of rules. It's a way so that that may not quite fit within our zoning regulations, and allows a little bit more flexibility than just simply following our zoning regulations. Coupled with this, we look at things like off-street parking, bulk dimension standards. So what's a bulk dimension? Size, shape, and placement. So size, shape, and placement of structures. Another thing that we look at through zoning regulations are landscaping and screening, okay? How do we separate the various districts? How do we separate? And then a big one that's come up recently is signage. You know, what's a signage to look at? One topic that's become a lot of chatter lately is off-premises versus on-premises signage. There was an article recently in the International Municipal Lawyers Association magazine that talked about how that distinction may not be legal anymore. City of Branson, thankfully, due to Joel's leadership, we are out ahead of that. We passed a new zoning code in, what was it, 2019?
The signage portion, yep.
Yeah, the signage portion, and we got rid of that distinction, because with the Reed versus Gilbert case, which talked about basically you're reading signs, doing content-based regulations, there's some questions about the constitutionality about that. So again, signage falls under this zoning regulation piece of your duties. Other piece is subdivisions, and Joel, you want to change voices for a second?
Yeah, sure. So with subdivisions, the reason we have regulations is mainly to ensure the minimum public improvement standards are carried out, so that there's underground utilities. In our case, that's what we require for not only electrical, and obviously sewer and water needs to be underground, but then also sidewalks. Sidewalks are a part of that. We now require with any new subdivision that instead of having two 4-foot wide sidewalks on both sides of the road, we the preference is to have a 7-foot sidewalk on the north or east side of the road. And that's so it gets sunlight and melts if there happens to be snow or ice. So things like that are very important as subdivisions develop. We also have an open space requirement for any subdivision, and that's a certain amount of acreage based on per person, and that's to ensure that the city provides space for not only open space for healthier lifestyle, but possible recreational opportunities as well, and it also can help preserve vegetation and steep slopes. They can be used by developers in that way as well. Also, when we review subdivisions, we're looking at the street layouts, that it won't have a negative effect on our existing transportation system. And also stormwater is a big thing. We want to see how it's being handled and where are the detention areas and what effect it may have on neighboring properties as well.
So, back to just basics, P&Z 101. So our authority to regulate land falls under the Missouri, what's called the police power. So that's the authority by, in our case, a fourth-class political subdivision. We're actually a hybrid because we have a city administrator form of government. It's our ability to regulate personal conduct for the purpose of protecting rights and liberties. So one of the things that's always kind of comes into play is how is the land being used, and does it have the potential to violate the rights of others? Okay, so one of the goals here in your making of recommendations and your inquiry, if you will, is to look at these and make sure that we are, in fact, protecting the rights of others and protecting against potential violations between individual zonings and land uses. So, roles and responsibilities. This is a big thing that is kind of unique to the role of the Planning Commission. So, again, one of your roles is to adopt the comprehensive plan. That's the Comprehensive Plan 2030 that we all work under. Another duty you have is also to write and administer the zoning code, and that's Chapter 94 of our municipal code. So that's where all the things that kind of Joel highlights with everything that comes before the commission, that's where it lives. That's your part of the city, okay? And the final, and probably the most significant, is you all make recommendations for proposed developments. We like this development, but it needs X. We don't like this development because of Y. So that's your job, is to basically facilitate information that can be provided to the Board of Aldermen. Now, the Board of Aldermen, because again, they're the overarching legislative body of the city, their job is to support the adopted comprehensive plan, and right now we're under the 2030 plan, and to adopt zoning and subdivision ordinances. So we make a recommendation that we should have this change in Chapter 94. You can't pass that on your own right because you're a recommendation body. That would have to go up to the Board of Aldermen and have them make a decision whether it's appropriate to add to city code or not. And then also they have the final say. They can approve or deny proposed developments and improvements, and it just takes a simple majority to concur with your decision. And if it's a denial, so if planning and zoning denies, then it's a 2/3 vote. What's unique about the city of Branson is a majority is a 2/3 vote because we only have 6 aldermen. So it's kind of something in statute that's there for jurisdictions that have more than 6 board members. So, states authorize establishment of a commission of appointed, you are all appointed, not elected, commissioners to develop this comprehensive plan and the regulation for implementing those plans, the zoning, the planning. And bottom line is you are the first line of defense against property rights violations and the inefficient allocation of resources. I mean, that's the goal here behind a comprehensive plan, behind what we're doing. Are we efficiently and effectively using the land and the inventory of the city in a means that forwards the community's goals? So we're going to kind of change topics a little bit and just kind of, I know a lot of you have been on boards before, Commissioner Davis, but how can the commission fulfill this role not only legally but also ethically? Hold effective hearings. And what we mean by that is we want to remember what is the purpose of the regulations? What is our goal when an item is brought before the board? And that is controlled by a set of bylaws. And you all have been presented, it's the biggest packet sitting on your dais, with the Planning Commission bylaws. These are the rules that this board abides by, okay? And I encourage you all to take time to read through these. And if you have questions about what a specific term or specific phrasing or rule means, that's where Joel and I come in. You know, we're your subject matter experts, if you will, to help advise you on this. And but these are what control how these meetings are to take place and what are the rules governing these meetings. So again, very important document that drives your decision making. So, importance of orderly meetings, why? Because we want to obtain facts, because again, remember, you are recommending things to the board. We also have to remain impartial when we're on a planning commission, because again, there is the potential that the record is subject to review on appeal. So, things that are said, things that occur, an aggrieved party, meaning, like say somebody stands before you, you deny a request, board ultimately votes against it. When it goes up to the Board of Aldermen, there are certain remedies that are available to that party. So again, this record matters. The information that is conveyed matters. So, effective hearing tips and tricks. Again, this is not me speaking, this is SimCog, but prescribe the order of the hearing in advance. Only one person speaks at a time and only from the podium. This stuff is outlined in your bylaws, and it tracks. Begin with a statement on order and personal conduct during the hearing. It's important to kind of level set how these hearings exist and how they are to go forward. One other thing that matters sometimes is have participants swear to tell the truth. We don't have that obligation here, but again, this cycles back to the idea that there is a potential that this record could be used on an appeal by an aggrieved party. And then allow both parties to participate equally. So sometimes you will have counterpoints. So the applicant may have a difference of opinion than his neighbor on this specific matter. So again, this is where we want full participation from everybody. I think that's one of Mayor Milton's big tenets. And then maintain order throughout the hearing. You have Robert's Rules cheat sheet. There's a number of these on the internet. This is SimCogs that's been provided to you, but these are common rules with regards to how to make a motion, how to call for a vote, what vote is required. A lot of times this is where we lean on the expertise of the chairperson, because they are kind of the, we'll call them the ringleader, if you will, as to how these hearings are to go. But Robert's Rules is how you get business done. So again, you have a cheat sheet here if you want to make an amendment, if you want to make a motion, if you want to introduce business, or how you want to go about voting. These are the rules, and these are just kind of the process to follow. So this is just a layout of an effective hearing. This is kind of what SimCog recommends. Good news, we follow this process, so life is good. Again, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel in a different way down here. One caveat that they always tell is remain mindful of the purpose of the hearing. It's hard with emotion, it's hard with concerns to sometimes stray off topic from what the matter is before the board. Is this a zoning request? Is this a code amendment request? You know, that's where the asking of the questions, the taking of the notes, recording facts, and being thorough in your recommendation helps. Again, not just helps the other members of the board here today, but helps the Board of Aldermen when this goes up. Because again, one of Joel's duties is when this hearing's over, he memorializes what he's heard and what he sees into a document that is presented to the board. Let's see, what was this context? Don't worry about preventing any potential harm, okay? There's sometimes a fear at the P&Z level that it's your goal to plan for all unforeseen consequences, okay? Development regulations take care of many of those potential harms, so that stuff comes later on in the process. You know, when we're looking at zoning, again, zoning's different than a development regulation. Nuisance issues are different than a zoning regulation. So again, when you're looking at a decision, looking at some information, gathering facts for your recommendation, remember, you can't prevent all potential harms, because again, those come later on in the process. Did you want to chime in on this, Joel?
Yeah, that's one of the things we include quite often in our resolutions, is that they have to follow all codes and ordinances of the city of Branson, right? And we've had those discussions as well, that we may start to talk about, the building or things with the use. And we have supplementary use standards for a lot of our uses, which provides an added layer of protection with certain things that you all may be concerned with, or community members may. And same thing with building codes, that, once somebody is ready to start building, that's really the initiation of a process where so many other codes and regulations come into play, outside of the things that you really all are trying to get figured out at this point in the process.
So, effective hearings, this is hearing 101. SIMCOG recommends try to discern between a fact versus an opinion and passion versus legitimacy. Again, this is your job. You are a fact finder as a board. That is your goal, is to develop competent facts for the Board of Aldermen to consider in their decisions. This is a big one sometimes. I see this a lot myself in boards I deal with, is that ex parte communications, okay, conflicts of interest. You have a really good article that Joel found that's in front of you that kind of goes through this, because some of you work in this profession, and you have to be very careful to make sure that the things you're doing privately as a business owner or as a contractor don't conflict with your duties to the city, your fiduciary duties to the city as a planning and zoning commissioner. So that's where our expertise comes in. If you're unsure, it doesn't hurt to make a motion using your Roberts cheat sheet there, to ask for a brief recess so that we can discuss this and make sure that you are comfortable going forth. And if in doubt and you don't want to go down that path, you can always step out of the conversation, step out of the vote. Okay, because again, remember, there is a process and there is a potential right for appeal, and that's always an issue that's attacked. Okay, if that person standing up there, that applicant, they view they've been adversely affected, the first question that attorney's going to ask is there a conflict of interest? What caused this? Because this didn't go the way I anticipated it to go based on other similarly situated projects before the P&Z Commission. Go ahead, Joel.
And that's a really simple reason why, too, with our study session, we always try not to get into too much detail, because the real goal is to have that communication, whether it's with community members, whether it's with the applicant, whether it's amongst yourselves, to do it here publicly in the meeting. If that all occurs outside of the meeting, then the rest of the commissioners who aren't part of that conversation don't have the benefit of that conversation. So it's just a really good idea to bring that out and have that conversation, ask those questions here with everybody.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, this conflict of interest.
Uh-huh.
Someone on this council has a conflict, and so we announce it. Do we need to leave the room? We don't need, we need to cease participation, I know, in the discussion. Do we need to
Correct.
go in the audience, leave the room, or what?
At the very least, I would go in the audience. I know that the practice down here has been to leave the room entirely. You want to put yourself in a position where there's no possibility for you to influence the discussion or the vote. That's the goal. So I think back to Alderman Simmons, who I have profound respect for. What he would do every time Table Rock Asphalt would come before the board is he would stand up and walk right out that door. And then he'd wait for the mayor, hopefully not to forget about him, and call him back into the room. So I think that's probably the safest practice.
Mr. Chairperson, we do have about 6 slides left, although gaining and defining of facts is a little bit different than what we've been talking about the previous slides. So what's your thoughts on proceeding? Would you like to wrap things up tonight after we're done with our regular items, or how would
Let's
you like?
do that.
Okay.
Let's wrap it up right here and continue at the end of the meeting if we have time.
Apologize, just if you have questions, can you make sure you write them down or something? That way we don't miss them if you had them from the segment we've just gone through.
Very good.
Thank you.
Good stuff, thank you. So, well, at this point, we will take a motion to adjourn the study session, and then we'll take a short break, and staff can get the next round of data up in front of us, and we'll take a bit of a break and re-adjourn for the regular meeting in about 5 or How many minutes do you need? 10 minutes?
We'll just take 5 minutes.
All right.
If we can get that motion and second to adjourn.
Need a motion to
I'll
adjourn?
make that motion, Mr. Chairman. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Lloyd and O'Day. How do we, going to do a roll call vote for this?
We'll go ahead and do that.
Please do a roll call vote.
Thank you, Chairperson. Commissioner Romine?
Yes.
Commissioner Richards?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson O'Day?
Yes.
Commissioner Howden?
Yes.
Commissioner Lloyd?
Yes.
Commissioner LeBlanc? Chairperson Davis?
Yes.
Commissioner Nichols?
Yes.
Alderwoman Denham?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, come back in a few.